Bang, bang. Welcome back, y'all. You were in the Video Game Gang. This is your boy Skip, a.k.a. Skip and Tosh, with my man Kory, a.k.a. What's Up Pizzas?
What's up, pizzas?
See, he said it. Because pizzas are up.
Because catchphrases, man. Marketing.
Yeah. Promo. Getting things stuck in your brain box.
Exactly.
I got some comics that are stuck in my brain box that I am surprised at how much I enjoyed for various reasons. But before we get into that, all praise and thanks due to Oblivion Comics and Coffee. Thank you so much to them for providing us with these books so we can read them and review them for y'all. Make sure you guys visit Oblivion Comics and Coffee downtown Sacramento, right across the street from the cathedral, right across the street as well from the state capitol. Hey. And make sure you mention VGB or Video Game Bang. They'll give you a dope sticker and they'll give you 10% off of your purchase. And then you can give it right back to them and buy more cool stuff, because that's how the world works, right? We can't just take. We gotta give too, baby. You know what I mean? But yeah, Kory, yeah. I mean, these books, bruh, they're like, we're gonna talk about them, but can we just talk a little bit about them? Like, what how did you feel?
I'm learning a lot now because to some point I think I was spoiled with the original run of Powers and House of X with just how great they were.
Yeah.
And so now I'm coming to terms like, wow, I kind of didn't like that, or that wasn't that cool, or I don't know if I want to read that one anymore. So it's like my tastes in the comics are starting to become a little more clear, and actually there was a lot to compare and contrast between the two books we're talking about today, which I'll hold up for the camera right there: Marauders and Excaliber 1 for the new X-Men books. And they all focus on, different sets of heroes, have very different tones, and some things I like, some things I don't like.
It'd be like that sometimes, man. And, that's kind of funny because as I was getting back into comics some years, at this point, maybe about 7 years ago. Yeah, about 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago, I was getting back into comics big time. And that was one of the things, because it was interesting. I remember the quality of comics around the time that I got out. As I was, getting older and, getting away from having allowance and getting into having bills. So, certain things like comics, kind of took a back seat. And when I got away from it, I remember, to me, it was more about the overarching story and then, like, the art. And as long as those things were intact, I was pretty much cool, because everything back then, to me, a comic was a comic. As long as I had Batman doing Batman things, you know what I mean? Superman doing Superman things.
Yeah.
Spider-Man doing Spider-Man things, I was good. But then, we come back around to this time, and it was interesting to me because I noticed that the overall quality of comic books, the overall quality got better. The art was better than it was before for the most part. The writing was better than it was before for the most part. But I didn't realize what was great versus what was good versus what was mediocre. I didn't really have a gauge, and it really wasn't until I started reading like stuff from Rick Remender, Ed Brubaker, and especially Jonathan Hickman, that I started to realize the difference. And that's when I was like, oh, so this Brian Michael Bendis book that everybody tells me I should love, I really don't like it, because it's not nearly as good as this Ed Brubaker book over here or this Jonathan Hickman book. So it's funny that it is true. I agree with you. We almost got spoiled to a point, because we got Hawks and Pox and we get through those, and then you come to realize, oh, okay, here comes these other people. Now, luckily for us, because Jonathan Hickman set the table, so far all of the creators that are sitting down to eat with us have provided us what I feel are quality books. But now we really start to get into the weeds of, is this my kind of book or not? So, Kory, why don't we start with the book that was very apparently your kind of book? And I kind of, as soon as I read it, I kind of called it, and I was like, oh, you're going to like this one. I'm going to have you start off, Kory. Go ahead and jump into Marauders by, and why don't you, actually, I'll let you introduce who the writer is, who the artist is, and all that stuff.
So for writing, we're looking at Jerry Duggan, and we have Matteo Lolli as the art, and then doing the colors, we have Federico Belli.
Yeah.
So three people. I can't pick out their work from one another, so it's complete, fresh, open, blank slate as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. Yep.
One thing I could tell, you did mention that Jerry Duggan was known for like Deadpool stuff, so yeah. I assumed it was going to be more on the comical side.
Yep.
Band of Misfits type of storyline with and there's a lot of jokes in this book.
Yeah. There are.
And
no shortage of that.
It's not always great, I think, when you're like, that was just a joke. Like, right. I could imagine him writing that trying to get a laugh, as opposed to that being, naturally what one of those characters would have said or done.
Exactly. Yes.
Which was a little took me out of it. And while I did like this book more out of the two. Yeah. And I'm gonna follow it for a little while longer, of course, just to kind of see where it goes. Right. I wasn't just automatically hook, line, and sinker. This is my next new book.
Yes, sir.
There's still other ones I think I'm looking forward to a little bit more. But basically, it does kind of start off answering a question about a popular character we were asking ourselves about throughout House and Powers of X, which is Kitty Pryde.
Yes.
Who I guess I didn't know doesn't like to be called that anymore. She's going by Kate now.
It's a totally new thing.
Is it a new thing?
It's a Jerry Duggan thing.
Kate Pryde?
Kate Pryde.
So that's fine. For whatever reason, she can't go through the portals.
Which I have a theory on.
That's how we start the book. Everyone's like, all right, welcome to Krakoa. Which, this was one of the parts that did land for me as being pretty funny. Yeah. You get the same, we know that everybody's in harmony. Storm and Nightcrawler are saying, come to our wonderful land. Yeah. And she's like, all right, see you on the island, looking back. Yep. And then Buster knows, basically, on the thing. And they're like, wow, well, that's kind of new. I guess you're going to have to take a boat. And we'll figure it out later.
Indeed. Which I thought was, as far as the joke itself, for me personally, didn't land so much. But I liked that instead of a joke just being an empty joke, he did use something that I'm sure when he wrote it, he was probably like, I see all of Jerry Duggan's jokes as he writes them. I see him up there with his half ball head snickering to himself. But what was cool is he turned a joke.
That makes it so much better now, the visual that he's half bald.
Oh, yeah. I'll show you pictures of Jerry Duggan
I've never seen him.
Oh, yeah. He's an interesting looking fella. But that he turned a joke into an actual story point.
Yeah.
To where she had to grab a boat, and this whole thing of how we already kind of thought that they would be like mutant pirates, so to speak. He turned a joke into that story point. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was a good intro. It was easy to understand, and we're set up, ready to go. I do love that we're back, so we get the Ahoy Muties, so it's in there very much in pirate lingo. You know what you're getting into. The characters that are the points of interest in this issue were Kitty Pryde, Lockheed, Storm, Nightcrawler, Iceman, Wolverine, Emma Frost, Bishop, and Pyro. Yeah. Classic Pyro.
Classic Pyro, too. Yeah. With the accent and everything.
I love that. Let's kind of just talk about that overall, because that's a theme in both books so far, is that they're just bringing, now that they have the power to bring mutants back.
Yep. The resurrection machine.
They're just resurrecting old folks.
Yep.
Good or bad.
Yeah.
And so he's one of the ones that they bring back. And it's even acknowledged in this book. Whoa, wait, classic Pyro? It's you.
Yep.
And I think they even say accent and everything.
Yeah, straight up. Which I thought was interesting too, because one of the things about Pyro, and this was something that headcanon has to resolve because it hasn't been said yet, and I don't know that they're going to specifically touch on this. But remember that people, there could be multiple versions of people that got backed up or saved. That got backed up into the crystal database, that they were using to save in case they lose a mutant. They can bring that version back in the resurrection machine. But what's interesting is that this version of Pyro is way older than what they would have first backed up, and that doesn't get talked about. So I just thought that was kind of interesting how this is a much older version of Pyro. How would they have gotten this version of Pyro? Because as they start backing things up, he would have already been a far different version. So that was just something interesting. Now, am I complaining about it? Heck no. This is my favorite version of Pyro, so I'm with it. But I thought that was just kind of an interesting point. And also why I think that was interesting is because the version of Iceman, which does make sense that we have, is a newer version. And fire and ice makes me think of that Will Ferrell and John Heder movie.
Oh, Blades of Glory,
dude! The second that I realized it was that, I was like, dude, if Jerry Duggan doesn't make a Blades of Glory reference, I'm gonna be very disappointed with him, and I may discontinue this book. But that was kind of what was interesting about Pyro coming back to me.
Yeah. So that's a good point. I thought about that too. I chalked it up to maybe Sinister having some backups, but even at that point, Charles very specifically set up the mental save points,
right?
Basically,
exactly.
So we then kind of go. She's on the open sea, not for too long, all by herself on this little boat that she stole, and she ends up getting to the island. And this is where like the parts that of comedy that I didn't really care for.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about those.
Like, so they thought maybe you can only enter the portals from our side, so she tries it from Krakoa side and still can't get in.
Right.
And there's like a little girl who says, "Hey, I heard you're the mutant that can't use the gates." And she turns and says, "And you're the little kid that everyone wants to fight," with like that kind of, demon face.
Right.
And that's the kind of stuff I don't like.
Yeah, that's like that anime, especially for the art side of things.
Super anime.
Very anime.
Yeah, it's super anime, and I don't know, wasn't necessary or even that funny.
Right.
So I don't even know why it was there, when I really try and break it down.
Right. And may I add, not actually a part of known Kitty Pryde character to speak like that to anyone, really, especially a child, though.
Yeah. So they're definitely taking some liberties to make her more of a piratey, scrappy, like type of character.
Yeah, kind of like what do you call those? A scurvy knave. They're really turning her into a scurvy knave.
Yeah. And so person that welcomes her is Iceman.
Yep,
Iceman, Bobby Drake, and
which was interesting too because they have prior relation. I mean, not even too far in the past, like relationship status and stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty interesting too. How that kind of only slightly got addressed, not very much at all though.
So the one line in here too that kind of made me do an eye roll was the one here where she obviously can't get through the portal.
Right.
He says something like, "Oh, you can't get the gates to work." She says, "No, but I've been assured top men are working on it." And then Iceman says, "I'd like to meet these top men." Right. So it's like very clearly they're letting us know that this is the gay Bobby Drake.
Right. Oh, absolutely. This is the version of Bobby Drake that they currently have. Which, even that interesting, because, like, do I have a problem with gay jokes? No. Like, especially coming from a gay person. But it needs to be funnier and maybe a little more tasteful. That was like a very lowbrow
Super
joke.
lowbrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of was reminiscent of a little bit of the Sinister from the last series, where it felt like they were just leaning into it too heavy. It's a little over the top.
Overt, exactly, overt. Which,
that's fine. So maybe they just wanted to let us know that maybe their past relationship stuff isn't an issue no more, and that this is the progressive, homosexual version of Iceman, all in one comedy line.
Yeah, all in one lowbrow joke.
Yeah, one cheap joke just to kind of get all that stuff out the way.
Right. I would have definitely taken as much levity as in this book. I would have definitely taken a more serious moment about sure, let's address that he's gay, but why don't we make it a little more serious and like kind of lean into that side a little bit more,
or subtle,
or even more subtle. But anything that kind of respects the fact of where he is now and where she is now, where they are now, then kind of just mull over it in like some kind of corny, like lowbrow joke. I just think it's disrespectful to both of the characters and to the writers and to the continuity, because obviously Jonathan Hickman respected all of the continuity.
Yeah.
And Jerry Duggan, he just wants to fart on it.
Literally, yeah. So then Wolverine pops out of nowhere, and she brought him a bunch of good stuff too, which I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah. I didn't think it needed its own infographic on the side here. They gave exactly, this is literally never probably going to come up again,
and that's one thing that I have to point out really about the rest of the book so far in the series, but not fully the rest of the book so far in the series, but probably specifically this one. Like the very first infographic of Kitty Pryde like journaling, I felt like was pointless, and then this one I felt was pointless too, but at least I got a little bit of a laugh out of it. Yeah. But Jerry Duggan did not take these infographics seriously at all.
They're all just jokes.
Yeah.
Then as they're about to go check out and see where she's about to live or go explore Krakoa more, Iceman's like, "Oh, hold on, I'll be right back." Before we get back to that, there's this portal that no one's been coming through, because as we know, they put out the message and people have been flocking to Krakoa.
Right.
But there's this one portal that it's kind of strangely no one's coming through. Mm-hmm. And then we pick up on that a little bit later. Before that, we cut to her getting a, I don't know, what do you call it, telepathy call? Like a phone?
Yeah, it was like FaceTime audio telepath.
Yeah.
FaceTime audio, cerebral audio,
It's complicated, but Emma Frost wanted to talk for a proposition that she had for Kitty Pryde.
Right. Now, this personally was my favorite part of the book. I just want to throw that out.
Great.
Right
Tell me
now.
why.
I because we finally got a little more serious. We finally got a little more meat. And the thing that I was the most interested in overall with this side of the book was the corporate aspect, the black market aspect. All of these shell companies that Professor Xavier had, purchased and created to distribute the pharmaceutical drugs, the synthesized Krakoan flowers, which you and I are so interested in.
Yeah.
To get those out, and then also how they would use the flip side of it to get into countries that they aren't welcomed in, that didn't want to sign the treaty, to get those mutants back out. So we finally got a serious part of this, and I even like the characterization of Emma Frost. She was very much Emma Frost, trying to appeal to people's vanities, as she is a very vain person herself. So all of those parts, were interesting, and I even liked some of the honesty about how Kitty Pryde was not the first choice to lead. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
how it was
third choice we get reference. Like at this point, you're like, oh, she's like a little bummed because I'm second choice, and later in the book, you find out she was like third or fourth.
Yep. Like Storm, and I like how Storm was the person to turn her down, because woman to woman, Storm is not a vain person. Storm comes from poverty. Storm comes from Africa, where she was a poor child, and then once puberty kicked in, she started to get her abilities, and then her whole tribe thought she was a goddess, and that's where Charles Xavier found her. So really easy to just turn Emma Frost down, someone who's the polar opposite of her. So I really enjoyed all of the characterizations in that interaction.
Yeah. Cut to we get to see where Iceman went through the portal. Turns out that this portal lands him in Russia,
straight to Mother Russia, and
where there's just a welcoming committee, a dude in a giant off-brand Iron Man suit with power dampening abilities.
Yeah, let's call him Copperman.
Copperman, yeah, Bronze Man, something.
Bronze Man.
He's not as great.
Nope.
And he ends up, having a run in with these dudes and jumps back through the portal before he can get damaged.
Mm-hmm.
But it gives him pretty much enough of an information of what's happening over there. So basically, Soviet Russia, obviously one of the countries that is not down with the whole mutant movement going on.
Right.
And they didn't really say what their fears are. I feel like they did ration it out.
A bit, but I think they mostly kind of chalked it up to
Russia being Russia.
Russia gonna Russia.
Yeah. They're always classic heels. So
yep. Hey, if he dies, he dies.
Yeah, it's a tale as old as time.
Yep.
So then we get to see a little bit more of other spots, that are not cooperating. Taiwan, we go to, where they're just straight up lying to people.
Yep.
We determine.
Mm-hmm.
There's a woman, doing a press release saying, "Oh my God, my husband went through that thing and he never came back. They're stealing people."
Right.
And Bishop shows up, with honest Bishop, which we didn't see him in the last yet either. This is the first time we've seen him.
And I actually liked how he got introduced. I was like, look at you, Jerry Duggan.
What did you think of his? Yeah, what did you like about his reveal and just his new look?
I liked that it wasn't a joke.
Yeah, no, this one was straight up. Yeah,
I liked that even though it's an old trope, it's a good trope, and Jerry Duggan used it at the proper time. Having Bishop be just a person in the crowd in Taiwan as that's going on, and having him also be a detective. It seems like he wanted to investigate what happened with her husband, because initially in my mind I was like, well, if your husband went through the portal, you didn't know, but the whole time he was lying to you. Your husband been a mutant homegirl.
Yeah.
Almost like Samori, he's been cheating on you. He's been muting on you.
The lie detector determined that.
That's right. You are a mutant. Yeah.
And they have very specific, we know that they have record of everybody who goes through those portals anyways.
Exactly.
So Bishop was able to easily probably cross-reference this dude, and comes up and he's like, "Sorry lady, this is either made up or something's going on," and she just runs away basically.
Straight up. She didn't want to deal with the truth. So I just like how that part came in and all, and that was kind of the end of the scene. After that we go back to the 7 Seas, and we get to one of your favorite parts, huh? Or was it? Or not?
So it was okay. So this is where we get to, it's cool because what we're seeing is that they are resurrecting people. We get that cool interaction of fire and ice, where Pyro kind of comes up, and Kitty asked for Storm's help on this one. Storm is helping as a favor basically for Kate, and doesn't want anything to do with the Emma Frost side of it. Nothing. They decided that Pyro would be the right person to bring, and Iceman. So they're stacked.
Yeah.
They're stacked right now.
Now, there is a little part in here that I want to address, and I'll address it quickly. This part, and again, Jerry Duggan, kind of going beyond the jokes, he kind of brings up the point about how Pyro didn't really ask to be resurrected. And now we're getting into, like, things that are interesting, points, like, if we're going to get all Dr. Kevorkian about it, right to live, right to die. Like, Pyro was dead. They didn't ask Pyro if he wanted to come back. He had not signed a thing stating, hey, if I do die, go ahead and resurrect me. He could have very much wanted to stay. And even the way that they did it, how he said, he'd come to, he was his age, and then something had happened, and he ended up, like, kind of bouncing out of the pod and running away. And then, next thing you know, he was, sleeping. And when he wakes up, he's, like, on a boat, waking up from his nap. And I just thought that was really, really interesting how they actually, because that was something that immediately came to my mind just reading Jonathan Hickman stuff. He's very much into the psyche of things and people. So I thought it was nice that Jerry Duggan took a break away from some seriousness to, again, address something kind of serious, like right to live, right to die.
Yeah, and looking at the panel a little closer, the first one he's smiling, saying, like, I don't remember a damn thing, and then bam, I'm awake. Yeah. And then in the next one, he's kind of sad.
Yeah.
And he's like, actually, then I realized they were just kind of using me as a lab rat.
Right.
And I was going to just steal this boat and get into trouble. Like he was almost going to right. lash out, but he took a nap instead. So there's your comedy, to come back.
Exactly.
So we get our fight scene here, which is pretty quick, pretty awesome. I mean, if you know me, when I read comics just to see some cool panels of people fighting.
Yes, sir.
And we got to see... This is my favorite part of the book.
Okay.
Just seeing Kate just wreck fools in clever, creative ways.
Very much, very much. I give Jerry Duggan credit for that.
Some pretty brutal. I mean, nothing I guess we haven't seen before with the character, but just, the way that Mateo Lally did the artwork on it and stuff. Like, she, at one point, takes a guy's gun and puts it, like, phases it into two guys' legs.
Yeah.
And I felt that.
Yeah.
I just went, ooh, that was one of those good ones. And then she just runs, like a tank comes up, she grabs the guy, pulls him, like phases him halfway through the tank.
Yeah.
So she kind of, I see Iceman, Omega Level, and Storm, and Pyro, and they don't even really do too much. It's just like 4 or 5 straight pages of Kitty Pryde just dominating everybody.
Absolutely, which made sense to me because I had already heard before then that the first one was going to be a Katie Pryde story, which Katie, I'm sorry, that just doesn't roll off my tongue well. I'm gonna call her Kitty, okay? And it's just like Power Balance Pavilion. And
we'll get into
Arena.
Calling people their proper names in the next one.
Oh yes, we will, Mr. I can't even pronounce it, but they had to, since she's going to be the leader, they had to assert her dominance, and in these fight scenes, they had to kind of remind us that she can be a worthy opponent, on the battlefield as well. So I understand why, even though that, like you said, Storm and Iceman are Omega level, they could have just mopped up everybody. They're your battering ram and your bazooka, but Kitty got in there and got our hands dirty, so to speak, pun intended. She's wearing gloves, and I even like how the fact that she ended up with the sword. You know what I mean? Very pirate-esque. So yeah, that part was pretty solid. But then that part wraps up, and they go into Russia, and they get the and they beat up the bad guys, and they're getting the people out. One of the worst parts of the whole comic book to me occurs. Kory, can you guess which part was one of the worst parts to me?
No, I'm curious.
Okay. It was not immediately after the page where they're sitting there and they're kind of talking and kind of deciding, like, hey, people, come home with me, whatnot. It was the whole, if you're a mutant and can't get to Krakoa, then the Marauders will bring you home, with the finger guns pointing directly at the camera in the panel with the dragon around her neck and the scarf. That breaking the fourth wall, I was like, Jerry Duggan, you're writing Marauders, not Deadpool. Marauders, not Deadpool. We don't need you to break the fourth in this comic book. But Jerry Duggan, man, he just can't help himself.
Yeah, I guess I didn't even take it as breaking the fourth wall. I took it as she was... But yeah, when you say it, like, that would have been a stupid thing to say to the rest of the X-Men or the Russians. So that line is totally meant for us.
Pointing at us, and look, she's looking at
actually
us. She's
literally pointing at us.
And it's finger gun. Well, I mean, like, if you put the thumb down, but like, and then like and it's the Marauders logo thing.
The
and
saving
everything.
grace though is how beautiful that panel is though.
Oh yeah, don't get me
That's
wrong.
the only good.
Quality art.
I 100% agree with you. But yeah, at least it's pleasant to look at.
Fantastic art, bad creative choices.
Bad creative choice. Yeah, and that was the sweet, humble moment, the team forming moment that we kind of rushed through in one comic. Is that now you have this team and they can go through the portal and go back home easily, and she could just hop on the boat and go home. But they're like, no, like we're a squad now. We came out here together. We'll go home together, and that's kind of the theme. And then we get the cheesy Marauders line. Yeah, and we get a little epilogue, I guess, because I thought that was like the formal ending.
Yeah, I mean, a little tiny epilogue. They went back to the whole thing that Hickman had created in the old one, the red diamond thing, which was connected to Sinister, and it was like, the best news and gossip from Bar Sinister. I'll be honest with you, again, not really relevant and kind of wasted. And it was literally the last page, so you can obviously
it's like
tell
Jerry Duggan liked that Sinister thing. It was like, can I do one?
Yeah, that's literally what it was like. Hey, Jonathan. Hey, Johnny, can I do one?
I can knock this out.
Oh my gosh, it annoys me. I will say before we move on to the next book, that the whole thing about Kitty Pryde not being able to go through, I think it's a personal thing. Being that Krakoa likes to have control, Sage and Cypher being the ones that are communicating with Krakoa, and then Sage being the one that's in charge of the comings and goings. I think Krakoa doesn't like the fact that Kitty Pryde's power is that she can phase through anything, so she can come and go as she pleases, really. Which I thought it was weird, but again, I know it's for the story that she hasn't tried to just phase through it and go through it. So I think it's just, and I think we'll find out later, Krakoa doesn't like the fact that Kitty Pryde has powers where she can just go right through. Yeah, because even with what's his name with Nightcrawler, he has to be able to see where he's going. Yeah. Otherwise, he can end up somewhere where he's not supposed to be. With her, she can just phase through anything, and I think Jerry Duggan's going to use that as a dumb joke. Like Krakoa just has an attitude that you can just.
You could have done it the whole time if you would have. Yeah, I wouldn't like that, and I think
neither would I.
I think you're on the right track, at least even if they don't do it that way, because immediately someone like made a remark of, "I wonder what you did to piss off Krakoa," right? And we know Krakoa is a person, so. Yeah, but the other thing I found strange is, didn't they allude to other mutants that aren't able to go through too? Like there's people who are stuck because they also can't go through the portal? I
don't remember that. The only time I remember them referencing other people was one, humans, because humans need a mutant accompanying them, and even still they're technically, unless they have a certain clearance, they have to run it by Sage in order to get in. Because like if we go to X-Men #1, which we covered and talked about, what's his name? Cyclops gave his dad, Quasar, who's a human, gave him the Krakoan flower, portal flower, so that way he can go into his biome anytime he wants to. But Cyclops has one of the highest security clearances that you can have.
You know what? And I just reread it real quick, and I just misinterpreted it. Okay. Basically, she's saying there's mutants across the globe that cannot access gates because of human interference, like the Russians guarding it with tanks. And
so they could never get in there to even plant a portal for them to be able to get through.
Yeah, and they said like there's a gate in Brazil that's become a hunting ground. Like they just go there and they hunt people trying to go through the portals and stuff. So they did a little bit of setup for like what we're going to see in the other countries.
Some world building.
Yeah.
It was very good.
So overall, going through it, I mean, I wasn't blown away, wasn't super excited for, the next issue that comes out, but I'm interested. I think it was good. I think the artwork was really, really good.
Yes,
and
it was.
I'm looking forward to just continuing this one and seeing where it goes. If I had to give it like a out of 5 rating, I'd say a solid 3.
Yeah. It's funny. I literally just rated it in the Comixology app.
Oh, did you?
I gave it a 3.
3? Hey,
solid 3. That's where it was. So that was that. Now we move on to Excaliber.
Where you could take the reins, man, because this is not my world.
I totally will, and I'm not even gonna make it long because magic isn't exactly my world either. When I was much younger, I was really into it, into like Willow and all those different things. And as I got older, I just kind of got away from it. I'm more into like science and science fiction than I am magic, so to speak. Although I do enjoy, even though I'm not into magic, so to speak, I do enjoy like the ethereal, spiritual realm, but a little less about like amulets and I don't know, a little less quirky, a little more like straightforward and more serious.
I feel you. Like I can get into a Doctor Strange storyline,
right? Yeah,
easy,
totally.
because it feels like it's its own world.
Yeah.
Even I haven't even watched the Harry Potter movies, but I could even see a world where I can get into that.
Sure.
But once it starts, and this one really hits you out the gate with going into old timey type
Camelot.
of magic. You're going to Camelot, the
King
other
Arthur.
worlds, and those type of wizard stuff, and then somehow mixing them with modern day mutants,
Right.
and so you said it perfect. One of the reasons I think I didn't enjoy this book so much is because there was like very little hand holding. It assumes you are into this type of
Lore.
genre.
Yeah, genre. That's a better word.
And that they use vocabulary that people who read this kind of shit regularly will be like, oh yeah, I know what that kind of summoning sequence is. And I'm like, I don't know, and you didn't explain it to me, so it means nothing to me.
Yep, very much. I mean, that was the case, and yeah, for those who aren't initiated, like me, like Kory and I, you know, it's a little more out on the fringe, and it was just a little kind of hard to walk along. I will say that I did appreciate the character story throughout. Before we dig too deep, I do want to give credit to Teenie Howard as the writer, Marcus Toe as on the art and pencils, and even Eric Arciniega on the art and captions, so to speak. So yeah, no, this one, it starts out, we got the twins, Betsy Braddock and Brian Braddock, both, well, Betsy Braddock, some people may or may not have realized, but there's a very convoluted story of how she ended up taking over and being Psylocke. It's a whole convoluted thing between her and Rogue, and then like her getting training in Japan and then ultimately becoming Psylocke with all that. It's a very convoluted story now, and it did get touched upon, so I do want to give Teenie Howard credit for, you know, Jonathan Hickman telling her, you better do your homework. I did my homework. All you suckers better do your homework. But it starts off with them. She is leaving their institution that they have. Brian's kind of sending her off. He's happy for his twin because they're twins. I'm happy that she's going to be able to go to Krakoa and kind of maybe live a life a little closer to the life that maybe she always should have had all along. By the way, Brian Braddock is Captain Britain. So for those who like Captain America and U.S. Agent, take a look at Captain Britain. He's pretty cool.
One thing, can you answer for me off the jump?
Yeah, sure.
Is the one holding the baby?
Yeah.
Who is that?
That's Brian Braddock's wife. I forget her name.
Is her power changing her hair color?
Everybody's power is changing their hair color these days.
That confused the hell out of me because I went through and I reread all the panels again because there's this one panel here at the bottom where it's the same lady with the same little girl, but her hair is blue that matches the dress.
Right.
So I said, is that her power? Her hair is just a chameleon to whatever she's holding.
Yeah, it must be part of it. I'm be honest with you, I don't know much about that character, but there was no other person in there, and she has the same shirt on. So yeah, she went from blonde to blue in no time flat. So I guess we got to give it to either that or the colorist really just wanted to give her some pointy elf ears and a new do.
That's what I'm saying about this, the hand holding thing. Like, there's no justification for it.
Nope.
If you didn't know, you'd be an idiot. Like, you feel like an idiot like me, and you'd read, the last 2 pages like 3 times trying to see, like, did I miss something? Is her hair blonde in every panel except this one? It's blue.
Right.
So even little things like that can confuse a new reader, and
totally, this
is not friendly for new readers.
It really, really wasn't, and that was something that I had heard about the book before. I did miss a part earlier about the Morgan Le Fay, Queen Morgan Le Fay. She's in Camelot. What's interesting, they touched on it and even made me forget, which is a good point of storytelling, but King Arthur and the rest of the royal family are indisposed. They're missing, and Morgan Le Fay is taken over as the queen, and basically the queendom, I guess, is being attacked right now, being overrun. The castle's being overrun, and she takes her general who's in charge and is kind of, almost chastising him, and then shoves his head into her pool, where she draws her power from, and there's a bunch of like Krakoan algae, so to speak, really the Krakoan flowers, and she's like, this is polluting, my waters where I draw my power from. You need to figure out why these plants are growing, and you need to stop them. And that's kind of what sets us off on the rest of the course. Betsy Braddock leaving the institute, Brian Braddock sending her off. She goes through the portal in Krakoa. People are calling her Psylocke. She's like, hey, I don't want to be Psylocke anymore. Why don't you just call me Betsy? We do get introduced to Apocalypse, who's going by a Krakoan symbol that we cannot pronounce because we're Humies, not Muties.
It's not for us, Curtis.
This book is not for Humies. Apparently, this is a book for elves, magicians, and Apocalypse.
I thought it was a little. Again, I still have reverence for Apocalypse when I see him, and then when I have him in storylines. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he has to, rebrand himself to everybody he talks to was a little annoying.
Yeah, it was.
It kind of demeaned him a little bit as a very powerful figure.
And you know what? If it would have been a serious point, like Apocalypse finally being so proud that everybody's on his page and he's in his land, because he was one of the first people to ever be on Krakoa back when it was 2 different islands, merged into one. I would have, but it became a gag throughout the book. Yeah. Like, oh, I can't pronounce that, so I'm just gonna call you Apocalypse. So
I didn't want that. Yeah, I didn't like that.
I didn't need it. It felt very Jerry Duggan-esque. Mm-hmm. I'll say that. But anyway, Apocalypse has found a Krakoan doorway, a gateway that he is not able to walk through or open so easily. Essentially, he says he needs a champion to breach it. We go past that and we run into some kids that are a group of kids that are doing some sort of divining, some sort of magic. I do want to give Teenie Howard credit on this, though. I will say that her infographics, if you read them, you could tell she actually puts effort into. She actually put effort into them, and it was funny because Jonathan Hickman put out a tweet of all the people's things, like I'm like a proud father for Teenie Howard's infographics, and I was like, he's just hyping her up and trying to encourage her. They're probably going to be crap. And I read them. She actually put effort into them, so I'll give her that. She did.
It was the opposite of the Jerry Duggan ones. I felt like they went, again, way too far over my head. I read it 2 or 3 times and still just did not know what as above, so below means and stuff. Right.
Well, that you can pull from the Bible.
Well, I guess.
Well, that's the only place.
Yeah, that's the only place.
And that's a really deep book, too.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, these kids are doing this magic. One of Kory's not favorite parts. Somebody pulls out a dagger, stabs himself on some magical thing, and then here comes Morgan Le Fay, basically telling them like, hey, I'm basically what she was saying is I'm hiring y'all. There's something going on, something regarding mutants, it seems like, and y'all need to go and find them and put an end to them coming through to my world through their little portal and basically polluting it with their Krakoan flowers. So,
are we supposed to know who this team of kids are doing these seances are?
I can't think of a way that we should know, because I have everybody that I've seen talk about this book too, no idea who the hell those kids are.
I could suspend disbelief fairly easily in comic books, right? But you gotta this team of strangers who we have no idea who they are, where they're at, doing something with ghosts, and then they just so happen to get this message or call through from Morgan, or were they doing this to summon her? There was so much confusion in who they are, what they were doing, and why that she came through at this time. I would have rather seen a page and a half of them just chilling, learning who they are, through dialogue, through conversation, rather than just jumping in on these random group of strangers. They could be Scooby-Doo, and I don't know what they're doing.
Honestly, it just didn't make a whole lot. Even like you said, to Kory's point, if it could have just been them hanging out, there's a magic book on the side, we get to learn a little bit about who they are, what's going on at their homes, whatever, bloop, bloop, bloop. And then Morgan Le Fay just popped up out of the book like, hey, y'all got to do some. Even that would have explained more who the kids are, because we know who Morgan Le Fay is. We got to look, but we didn't know anything about the kids. And then, but I guess, again, that's Teenie Howard, I think, trying to swing for the fences and really just ending up being over our heads. So there's a little part where Jubilee kind of gets broached, kind of talked about, and then Homeboy with the eggs gets talked about. Again, didn't really make a whole, it came in part later, but there could have been a more concise way to introduce Jubilee and eggs without taking a full page of kind of nothingness. So anyway,
this conversation that she has with Jubilee is like filler. The way I saw it, she just makes a joke about which one of these is a mimosa tree. They don't say anything significant. anybody walking past could have had that exact same dialogue conversation, yet it comes back to be a big deal later, and that confused and annoyed me too.
Right, because it didn't even need to happen.
It's not like she said where she was going, what she was doing, why she was there.
No. And even later they admit that she didn't really talk to her that much.
Yeah.
So even anyway, we'll get to that part, and we'll go over it very quickly. I'm gonna kind of start speeding things up a little bit. So basically, we find out that that one of their other brothers, Jamie, is alive because he's been resurrected, of course, and he's half naked and he's a very crude individual. Blah blah blah. He doesn't want to see their brother, but she says you should because he risked his life for you, and he deserves whatever, the right to know. But something did occur, and they found out that Apocalypse came and showed her the gate and said, I need you to get through this gate because I need to use your psychic energy to find out more about Captain Britain's amulet or whatever. Come to find out, she thinks that that something's going on over there. She goes back to see her brother, walks back through the portal. He's putting on his Captain
She has
Britain
two reasons to go see him now. One, to go let her know that their brother's back, and then two, on this mission that Apocalypse has out of nowhere.
Like a RKO.
Yeah.
And that's what this book was. T.E. Howard giving us a magical RKO out of nowhere.
From beginning to end.
Yeah. So anyway, she goes and sees him. He basically he's like, okay, well, if you really feel strongly about it, I trust you. She says, I'm going with you. So they go together, which was cool. I did like this part because it was a nice little brother-sister part. And he said he'd be honored for her to fight by his side. She has a new suit, which is not as good as Psylocke's old suit, but it's not bad. Basically they go to Camelot, where Captain Britain draws his power from in order to be Captain Britain. Morgan Le Fay is there. She's basically employing her plan, because again, the royal family is nowhere to be seen, and she's saying, I need you to take care of this mutant problem for me because they are polluting, my well or whatever, and she has power over them, so she starts to draw on the power. I'll be honest with you, Gambit is my favorite mutant of all time still to this day. I'm not even going to talk about this whole thing with him and Rogue, even though there were some interesting lines, especially talking about making more mutants.
Yeah, they definitely were playing up the whole like free love part of Krakoa.
And they could have paid for love because them two been hot for each other since back in the day.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what it comes down to is with Betsy being gone and her being important to Apocalypse trying to get through to that other side, to that other world, to Camelot, essentially, he employs Rogue and Gambit to help him, and then he starts putting together the rest of the team. He wants to go talk to Jubilee because Jubilee was one of the last people to see Betsy, and he wants to read Jubilee's mind. Again, this is the part we talked about. She didn't even talk to her. There was not much to glean from Jubilee's mind. Yeah. This is just the wackest way to include Jubilee in this. Now, I love Jubilee, but she has got one of the wackest power sets there is out there. Let's be honest, okay? Why?
He's bringing her out of there just to read about the mimosa thing. A conversation happened for 2 seconds that no one would have even really assumed they had. Like, it was such a stretch.
It was a stretch, bro. It was a reach and a stretch and yada yada yada. So anyway, I do like the fact that he did need to borrow Rogue's power in order to weaken the gateway, so that way ultimately they can try to breach it.
How did he know that Psylocke went there?
Well, he knew because he had told her what he was trying to do.
He told her to go talk to Captain Britain to try and get the amulet.
Right. And then when she got there, Captain Britain had already been Morgan Le Fay had contacted him via the amulet and saying, hey, Camelot is under attack. I need you to come back here and defend Camelot.
At that point, I feel like Psylocke should have communicated that exact thing to Apocalypse, who's on the other side that doesn't know about the Morgan Le Fay stuff. Really what's going on. They know it's going to Otherworld Camelot, but they have no idea that there's conflict or anything, and that might have been something they should have been brought in on.
And remember, that's what Apocalypse was saying. He was saying, bring Brian here. He said, you can bring Brian here. I'll let him pass through. Brian will be safe here. So that's what she was supposed to do. But
they didn't even address why she skipped out on that.
And this is why people say Teenie Howard has promise, but she's not there yet. Because there are parts of the story that it's like, okay, that's competent comic book writing, even though some of the dialogue is like, people don't talk like that, or at least people I know don't talk about Eat, Pray, Love, because that's an outdated reference.
Yeah.
How old are you, Teeny Howard? You look younger than me. But I'm just saying. But it's this stuff. Once she gets to the overarching story and some of the decisions that she has the characters make are frustratingly nonsensical.
Or have them make that decision, but justify it.
Justify it.
Yeah.
And have some better consequences for it.
Yeah.
But
stuff just happens.
Yeah.
For some reason. And when you're like, no, why did that just happen?
And that's a theme in Teeny Howard's book. She kind of writes the same female protagonist with things just happening. Don't get me started on Star Wars. Anyways, Jonathan Hickman, she ain't baby. Let's say that. That's a Prince reference. So anyway. Yep. Yet she could get there, and I hope she does, and she's close to him now. So anyway, we get in there. They're fighting. Morgan Le Fay starts to use her power to take over Brian Braddock to have her fight his sister. Ultimately, he does. Rogue does absorb enough of the power with her ability, absorbs enough of the power to weaken it. Right as she does, Apocalypse does his Cerebro FaceTime call thing. And we see Betsy throw her, which that part was kind of cool.
That was cool. This is cool. This is the highlight of the book for me.
Easily. Yeah. She turns her normal psionic jagged blade into more of like a King Arthur sword, Excaliber sword type thing. Throws it at the shield, which knocks Rogue the F out, but it breaks it through, and now they are and then Rogue starts to get taken by Krakoan flowers, that algae stuff, and then wrapped up and then laid down almost like Snow White. And then now this is the part again that was kind of a little jarring, because Betsy keeps fighting. She's fighting her brother. She gets the amulet from him, and he wards off some of the spell that Morgan Le Fay has on him to say keep the amulet, take it and put it on. And when she does put on the amulet, she gets the power of Captain Britain. Rogue is nude, wrapped up by flowers, and they kind of don't really Rogue tries to throw a punch at Apocalypse because
Gambit.
Oh, Gambit. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Gambit throws a punch at Apocalypse because of what happened to Rogue, and then from there it's she just walks through the portal. No more fighting Morgan Le Fay, no more fighting her brother. She's Captain Britain now, and what the hell happened to the fight that was going on? What happened to it? Now, again, the part that I like is that because Rogue had done something to Betsy Braddock before, and that's partially how Rogue got her power. She absorbed her powers from Miss Marvel, got that, and then something happened between Rogue and Betsy Braddock, and then eventually Betsy Braddock went on to no longer be normal Betsy Braddock, but to be Psylocke. Okay, so that happened. And then they tied the two together again via this thing. So again, I like the fact that we're paying some respect to continuity, but this literally doesn't make sense. They were fighting to the death, and then she gets the amulet, and she has the sword, and she's just there what happened to Rogue?
Yeah.
What happened to the fight? The hell with Rogue? And I love Rogue. Don't get me wrong. I love the accent. I love me a Southern Belle. Yeah. But what the hell happened to the fight?
I took it as she was, again, stuff just happens. So we have to try and draw the conclusions ourselves. But it was a losing fight, and she just had to escape. And I don't know whether she used the amulet to get back or the portal, because the portal might still be broken. There's just so much that I think didn't get explained
at all. And it was already too long, so they didn't need to make it longer, and they filled it with a bunch of fillers, so they didn't need to. And then for the last few pages, we're just gonna mull over them. Literally, some of those kids who look like Red Riding Hood go and looks like they steal some of the crystals that Apocalypse had, and now she's in a council with a whole bunch of other people in hoods.
Yeah, no, so the one girl who seemed to be the leader murdered her friends.
Oh, she murdered her friends.
Yeah.
There you go.
So all those people that she was with at the beginning are all they're at least unconscious.
Yeah, if not straight. Oh, no, there's blood.
Yeah, there's blood. They're straight up dead.
Yeah.
And it says, "Forgive me, my coven mates. When she said pray that we weren't conscripted, I took it to mean sacrifice you for her gain." So again, just now we have this other character we don't know with this team of kids who are all just murdered now. Right. And that was our our ending.
Yeah. So yeah, oddly enough, now as strongly as I feel about it, the overarching story and whatnot and the beats, I still like more. But she didn't stick the landing, and there's so much that got left unexplained. But I am just so not a fan of Jerry Duggan. I kind of still gave it to Teeny Howard. Sorry, Jerry Duggan. Who liked my tweet about being very skeptical of the team that was assembled around Jonathan Hickman.
I remember that. You were like, I don't know, Jonathan Hickman, about these people, and he liked it. Because I'm sure he was, from his perspective, he was like, me and our boy.
Yeah.
And what's his name?
Jerry Duggan.
Yeah, Jerry Duggan. He was like, he's not talking about me. He's talking about all the other writers.
Yeah. But I'm the guy who's gonna do this. And I'm like, you read too much. You read and write too much Deadpool, Jerry Duggan. Yeah. Go shave the rest of your head. And sit.
Out of 5, what do you give the Excaliber?
I give it a 3.5.
3.5?
Yeah. No, I give it a 3.25.
3 and a smidge.
3 and a smidge.
I will counterbalance you, because if you're above, I'll go below.
That's fair.
And say
2.75.
2.75. That's where I'm going.
That is fair. So that will do it for this episode of the Krakoacast. Thank you so much again to Oblivion Comics and Coffee for providing us with these books. If you are into magic, I think, and we all know that magic doesn't always fully explain how it works. I think you might get a kick out of this book, so still check it out. If you're into funny things and pirates, then I'd say definitely check out Marauders. Go down to Oblivion and Comics and Coffee, start a pull list, get these books. There probably still will be second printings for these, because I heard that they sold pretty well. And mention VGB when you go in there, or Video Game Bang, get 10% off of your purchase, and see us in there. We pick up our books. We're in there.
Yes, sir.
We for Kory What's Up Pizzas, my name is Skip, aka Skipmontage. Bye.